honoured to have been selected as Labor's candidate for Parramatta and to have the opportunity to seek to represent this incredibly strong community. I want to pay tribute to Julie Owens, who has been a dedicated and passionate local member since 2004, and I'm humbled to be given the opportunity to continue Julie's important work. My focus now is on meeting and talking to people right across Parramatta. I started at 6:30 in the morning on Parramatta train station after the pre-selection was finalised, and I will not stop until the last vote is cast on election day. I've spent the last 20 years as an economist and a business owner building stronger economies and stronger communities. And that is exactly what I want to do as the member for Parramatta, helping people with the financial pressures on families, especially childcare costs, creating the building blocks of opportunity, skills and infrastructure, and helping to ensure that Parramatta is a jobs hub for good, high-paid, high-skilled jobs and strong small businesses. In many ways, the future of Parramatta is the future of Australia, and I look forward to presenting my plans for Parramatta to voters over the next few weeks and months. And with that, I'll hand over to Anthony.
Well, thanks very much, Andrew, and I want to say that I'm very proud and pleased that Andrew accepted the nomination to be Labor's candidate for Parramatta. Andrew will bring extraordinary capacity to represent this amazing, vibrant community. He's someone who is in part the Labor story. I want to represent two issues that I keep talking about. No one left behind, which is in part what our aged care policy announcements last night were about, that I'll talk about some more. But also no one held back. Andrew is a success story. I want success stories. Labor embraces aspiration. Andrew established a business and was successful at it. He will bring enormous capacity to the federal caucus and to represent the people of Parramatta. And I believe he is an outstanding candidate. He'll make a great member of Parliament here in Parramatta. And he'll be a part of a team that has a vision for the country. A vision that's about growth and opportunity. A vision that is about supporting childcare for our youngest Australians, Medicare throughout people's lives, aged care for when people get older, childcare, Medicare, aged care, because Labor cares. That will be a major theme of this election campaign. And I outlined last night a comprehensive plan for aged care based upon the Royal Commission. Why is it that the government set up a Royal Commission into the aged care crisis but isn't prepared to act on its recommendations? In particular, they have provided some additional funding, but absolutely no idea of any program to meet the challenge of the big essential, which is workforce. These nurses behind us are people who have a tough job. It's physically demanding. It's emotionally traumatic at times to look after older people in their later years, to make friends with them, to know that they're dependent upon help, but to not be able to have the hours or indeed even the minutes to give the care that they really want to give and that the residents need. That's why our plan to put a nurse in every nursing home 24/7 is not only a recommendation of the Royal Commission, it's just common sense. Our plan to provide for additional minutes based upon the Royal Commission recommendations of care so that people can get not just showered and changed and fed properly, but also have the opportunity to have a bit of human interaction. It's not too much to ask. Thirdly, our plan for better wages. We need to address that. We'll put in a submission for the aged care workforce to be paid better to the Fair Work Commission. We know that's been identified by the Royal Commission as necessary if we're going to attract and indeed retain aged care staff. They deserve more than just our thanks. They deserve a decent rate of pay. Fourthly, issues like food. How is it that an interim Royal Commission put forward a clear finding that over half of aged care residents weren't getting the nutrition that they need? They're literally starving, and yet no response from this government. And fifthly, proper regulation, making sure that every dollar that goes into aged care, that there's transparency about where the money goes to, so that it goes to care, it goes to better food, it goes to better provisions, it goes to assist what aged care residents really need. These nurses who are with us today in Parramatta are heroes. They're heroes not just of the pandemic, they're heroes every day. And they deserve our thanks, our gratitude, but they also deserve the respect to be listened to about what their needs are. And over the last years, since I became the Labor leader, I've sat down with literally hundreds of nurses and aged care workers. I've heard their stories, I've listened, and last night we announced what we would do to act on their concerns. It's practical measures that we've put forward at a cost of $2.5 billion over 4 years. It's fully costed. We're being transparent about what is there. And yet this government had nothing to say about aged care in a budget after a Royal Commission was handed down. It's not good enough. Australia deserves better. This is a tired government that's been in office for almost a decade. They have no plan for anything beyond the next 6 weeks. One-off handouts won't cut it. Labor has a plan for childcare. We have a plan for healthcare, and we'll have more to say about that during the campaign. We have a plan for aged care. We have a plan for new industries. We have a fully costed plan on climate change and energy. We have a plan for jobs and skills. We have a plan to lift wages and living standards. We have a plan for a better future, because Australia is the greatest country on earth, but with a better government, we can have a better future. Happy to take questions.
You described Mr. Charlton as having extraordinary capacity to represent the vibrant community of Parramatta. Considering Parramatta is one of the most multicultural communities in the city, and considering that Mr. Charlton was chosen over 3 more diverse candidates, what capacity do you see?
Well, Andrew was in fact chosen unanimously by the Labor Party here in Parramatta. He was elected unopposed. I certainly spoke to a range of people here in Parramatta, including Julie Owens, and I do want to join with Andrew in paying tribute to Julie Owens, who's been a fantastic member over a long period of time. So Andrew has been pre-selected unopposed. There were a range of options and people put themselves forward, and that's a good thing that people are prepared to consider being a candidate for the Labor Party. We're a vibrant party, but I am pleased that Andrew received the support unanimously by being elected unopposed as Labor's candidate for Parramatta. I think people who meet Andrew instantly are attracted towards his qualities that he has. That's certainly been my experience over a long period of time. I have been looking for a range of candidates across a range of seats that fulfil the sort of qualities that make up a good government. And we have a diverse range of candidates, indeed, in the 2 seats of the 4 seats that were chosen this week, where nominations just to conclude all our processes. We have Andrew, we have Cassandra in Holt, someone who's of Sri Lankan background in what has historically been a safe Labor seat. We have Yana for the Senate from Victoria, who's the first Indigenous person selected by the Labor Party to run for a clear position that she will be elected to the Senate. Jana is someone who ran for us last time round in a safe Liberal seat of Kooyong. She showed her credentials. I got to meet her there, and I'm very pleased that that's the case. We have Linda White, who's a former Secretary of or Assistant National Secretary of a union, of the Australian Services Union. She has represented particularly poorer paid women in the airline industry, in the services industry, as the Assistant National Secretary of the Australian Services Union, and she'll bring that capacity. And we have Andrew, who has a background in business, establishing his own small business and being a success. We have a diverse range of candidates being put forward at this election, and that's what you need in government. What you need is that range of experiences to drive through the change so that you're in touch with all the views. And I can't think of a better seat than Parramatta, with the CBD here being the fourth largest in Australia and being so important and continuing to grow. Someone with the connections that Andrew has with the business community here in Western Sydney, someone who I think people who come to Australia, of course, come because they aspire to a better future for themselves and their children. This is a community made up of so many people who've established businesses themselves, and I think Andrew will be able to not just relate to all of the people of Parramatta, but be an outstanding representative for them.
Sorry, if I just might add, you said you think that you might be able to relate to people who live in Parramatta. Can you explain that further? How do you think you might be able to relate?
Well, he will, because of he's someone who engages with people from across the spectrum. You don't set up a successful business without being able to engage with them. And what we see in Parramatta is, and I've had a lot of contact with Parramatta over the years. I spoke before about my experience as the son of a single mum. I used to come for holidays at the Housing Commission at Ermington, where my cousin, who was one day younger than me, grew up. And we used to come into Parramatta as a kid regularly. So I've been coming here my whole life. I've seen Parramatta grow and be successful. This theatre here itself is an example of something that wasn't here when I was growing up. The sort of expansion that we've seen with the University of Western Sydney, the expansion of businesses, the CBD here, is dynamic. And I think that Andrew will be an outstanding representative for the people of Parramatta. Well, one of the things that we've announced previously is 20,000 additional university places in areas of skills shortage. That's important. We've also announced 465,000 fee-free TAFE places to train carers and people in white-collar and blue-collar industries where there is workforce shortages. You can't do it overnight, that's true. What you can do, though, is make sure that you focus on it. But I'll tell you this, if you have no plan to even try to get additional nurses, then you won't get any. And what you'll have is what's happening at the moment, which is people leaving the industry. I've spoken to people who are leaving the industry, whether they be nurses or carers. And what we need to do is to give, as these fantastic people said to me this morning, you've given us hope. We need hope for this industry, that things won't just stay the same as they are now. And that is my objective, and that's my passion, to make a difference. And we will make a difference. We will ensure that people are trained. We've announced those programs in terms of training, including for nurses. We'll work with state and territory governments as well, because anyone who looks at the Royal Commission report has to be moved by what the findings are. Well, of course, we already know that. I know from my own experience at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, there were lots of Irish accents from the fantastic nurses who looked after me and others. So, of course, that is important in terms of short-term issues, migration, including in areas of skill shortage, plays an important role. But I tell you what has happened under this government is that they've forgotten about the need to upskill Australians. So they've been dependent upon short-term visa holders coming to Australia to fill the gaps that are there in skills. What I want is for that to continue to play a short-term role, but it's for us to actually plan for what are the jobs that will be needed in the future. And we know that there'll be significant growth in the care economy. We have an ageing population, so we need to train and skill Australians to do those jobs. But in order to make it more attractive as well, we've got to make the very task of undertaking this work more attractive. None of these workers behind me do it for the money. They do it because of their commitment to their fellow Australians and their fellow human beings. They do it out of the care that they have in their heart. But we need also to appeal not just to people's hearts, we need to appeal to their brains as well. People have to pay bills. They have to be satisfied at work that they're not going to go home and be devastated because they couldn't give an older person the care that they wanted to and that was needed at the time.
How long would it realistically take to build enough of a workforce to adequately staff aged care?
Well, we'll get started. We'll get started on day one. Our programs, we've put out the announcement, the election, will be called sometime. I say to the Prime Minister, enough of the pantomime. Call the election. Call the election. Let the Australian people decide. This business of not calling the election so that he can use taxpayers' money for ads is just yet the latest example of a Prime Minister who thinks that taxpayers' money is the same as Liberal Party money. That's why yesterday, in court, in the High Court of Australia, the Solicitor General, the second highest law officer of the land after the Attorney General in terms of a Commonwealth position, was making representations on behalf of one side of a Liberal Party faction fight here in New South Wales, a Liberal Party faction fight that is the responsibility of Scott Morrison and Alex Hawke, who want to control absolutely everything and have received a response from the Liberal Party membership, which is division. That's why they don't even have a candidate here in Parramatta. So whilst I'm here today talking about aged care with the Labor candidate for Parramatta, Andrew Charlton, meeting aged care workers, talking about the difference that we will make, the Liberal Party don't have a candidate and are using taxpayer funds to appear in court to intervene in this faction fight. It's a disgrace and it's an abuse of taxpayer funding. Of course they should. Of course they should. Because the Fair Work Commission, when they make a decision on wages, it of course has to flow through. That's the law. That's the way that it works. But I tell you what Scott Morrison should do and what he hasn't done. He should, as Prime Minister and leading a government, make a submission saying that he supports a wage increase for people in the aged care sector. That's what I'll do if I'm elected Prime Minister. The Fair Work Commission operate independently of government, independently. So it's up to them to determine any wage increase. But government has a role, and there's precedent for this. In 2012, the Social and Community Services Award was adjusted after the then Labor government, of which I was a proud member, made a strong submission to the Fair Work case for a wage increase for those workers. And it's no accident that some of the most underpaid people in Australia are all in feminised industries: childcare, cleaners, aged care. No wonder we have a gender pay gap in this country, and the Fair Work Commission should bear that in mind when they make their decision.
Solomon Islands is pressing ahead with a security pact with China, admitting that Chinese warships could be based 2,000 kilometres from Australia's shoreline. Is this concerning to you, and do you think it's a failure of our soft diplomacy approach in the Pacific, and what would you do differently?
Well, this is a major concern for Australia. There is no logical reason why China needs to have that presence in the Solomon Islands. But Australia, of course, under this government, cut aid when it came into office. They cut aid is one issue that has undermined our presence in the region. But the other thing that has undermined Australia's standing in the region is a government that doesn't take climate change seriously. A government that goes to Glasgow, where the Prime Minister gives an empty speech to an empty room with empty promises and offers nothing for a conference that was about increasing 2030 targets. Australia sits in the naughty corner with Saudi Arabia and Brazil at these conferences. Now, I've attended climate change conferences, as has Andrew Charlton, as part of Australia's delegation. And I assure you that for the Pacific, for our friends, it is the number one issue. It's a threat to their very existence. And the fact that you have a government with key players, including Scott Morrison and Peter Dutton, who our Pacific Island friends know that they stood there in Parliament House and made a joke about countries going underwater. Made a joke, and the only response was that there was a boom mic there so that they got caught out. Sometimes at moments like that, it's a moment of candour. It's a moment of candour that's caused great damage, because when you have the Australian Prime Minister and the Australian Defence Minister making jokes, having a laugh at the expense of people whose very existence of their countries, like Tuvalu and Kiribati, is under threat, then it undermines our standing in the region. Thank you.